to an office in Richmond above a coffee shop called Bonan Coffee. And this business was called Cinegears, and its Wi-Fi network was also Bonan Coffee. And what I was going to say is, 2 months ago, Steven says, and he mentioned it twice today, that there was a break-in and $200,000 worth of equipment was stolen. And
what kind of equipment?
Of video equipment, of cords and bolts, and maybe a camera or two. And he obviously, that's obviously premeditated in some way for some kind of insurance claim, clearly. Also, because how could anybody possibly find that office or know where Cinegears even is? But apparently, like, I could rip them off for $200,000 because I know where their office is, but somebody else, there's no signage anywhere, so I don't know how that happened. He's an odd megalomaniac. He's a tall Asian fellow too. He barely noticed my height. And
that's weird.
We work with, yeah. It is weird. No one said anything about my height, actually.
Nobody said anything about your height.
No one said anything about me wearing a suit either. Grace certainly didn't say anything because she was very quiet. Working with my co-worker Grace. Working there for about a month. Putting together a website for wholesale food goods on WordPress. I don't know where she got the images of this food. She's also in the process of creating a logo for the company that Steven is starting called J Foods, I think it's called. Of which I spent the majority of my day researching infomercials as to how we were going to put together a spot for J Foods. At one point or other, Steven suggested that we get a samurai costume for some reason. And I suggested that we possibly shoot something outside. He said that would be too expensive. Because we need makeup and costumes. And then I said makeup, costumes, actor, me, John. That's 5 people. And you would need that inside. Just the same as you would need this. But he didn't really notice my having said that. And the idea of hiring someone for makeup and finding costumes seemed very unlikely to me, considering that all the infomercials prior to this starred no persons, but just camera equipment. So this would be his foray into the empire of people, I suppose.
I guess that's why you were hired.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He introduced me to his random marketing business financer friend as a successful screenwriter. I had, in the beginning of the day, told him when he asked me what I do, which is a funny question considering that he's the boss and it's my first day at work and he hired me for the job. I told him that I'm a filmmaker and that I primarily do my own directing, editing, and writing. And then later on the day, yeah, he calls me a successful screenwriter, but he doesn't mention the directing or the editing. So it just gives you an idea of how this man's mind works. It's very random. Very random.
I'm just thinking about him giving your coworker Jonathan the task of putting an Indeed ad out and hiring someone.
That's actually, to be honest, when I think about it, that's maybe the most impossible of all of the tasks that he has at hand, because I actually appeared and showed up at his non-existent workplace. And that doesn't make any sense. And I, to be fair, didn't completely read the ad. I just saw camera house, cine gears, some experience, this required. But of course, in retrospect, you can be sure that he just copied all of that from somewhere else. Like, he doesn't do any of his own research, clearly. He just copies it and pastes it. And yeah, it's mystifying. This idea of having an interview with Jonathan, who seemed more intimidating and serious when I saw him through the screen yesterday, but when I saw him in person, he was like a mere 5'4" or something. And Grace was like 5'2". But then Stephen was like 6'3" or something.
But in your interview, you were given the impression that this was a serious establishment where videos were made.
Yes, that's right. Well, I mean, suddenly it becomes more, well, you can explain why it is that his like 100 or 200 YouTube videos, majority of them, especially in the past year or two, they only have like 70 views apiece. And actually gets confused, because who are those views even from?
Some of them that I saw had 16.
I'd bet you anything that he probably pays, like, he outsources that and pays people in India or something to create those views, for all we know. They all star, all the instructional videos, if you can call it that, they all star Jonathan, and they're all shot by Jonathan. And they're all absolutely terrible, and there's no color correction, or Jonathan was merely shooting the camera equipment from various random angles, and then it gets edited together. So I don't know what his insistence is on like learning DaVinci Resolve and getting into color correction, when clearly that's also non-existent.
He asked you to learn DaVinci Resolve.
Yes, he asked me to learn DaVinci Resolve, of which I proceeded to attempt to learn the moment after him asking me to get into it this morning. And then, essentially moments later, he says, "Oh, you don't need to do that right now, like, don't worry about that. What you need to do is you need to watch all of our YouTube videos, and you need to look at our website and understand what we're all about, and just kind of note things to yourself on that, and then we'll have a meeting later," at which point I switched into note-taking mode, and then I started to fastidiously watch video by video, taking whatever notes I could muster on this equipment in these strange videos, and finding hardly anything to say about it because it's all so completely non-descriptive. I mean, there's pictures of the equipment on the website, so I was finding myself taking notes like, you know, like wireless transmitter, you know, and then sometimes I found myself counting how many wireless transmitters were showcased on the site. So I go like, you know, he's got 10 of those, and then I look around the warehouse, and you have no fucking idea where those goddamn things are. Like, there's no sight of those transmitters. At one point he storms in saying that he's just made a sale to B&H Photo on a few of these button transmitters for the Red camera. He's just sold $5,000 worth, like within like the blink of an eye somehow. And that we need to curb our plans for making the infomercial on the Japanese specialty Japanese ice cream and rice to get into it, me and John, on making an infomercial about these button transmitters, of which he then proceeded to show us a video of like the previous model of this transmitter, and then I asked, could we see the new transmitter? And then he goes back into the shop, rummages around a little, comes back, can't find it, says, I got lots of those at home. I'll show you one of them tomorrow. And so then Jonathan and I were, needless to say, at rather a loss because we didn't have the material to even look at, you know, so there was nothing that we could really do. So then moving on, we then proceeded to have our meeting in the other room where one of his random financial backer friends appeared, and they started to make a tentative plan to visit one of his friends, influencer friends, that was streaming platform in a warehouse in Richmond on Wednesday at 2 p.m. At which point Stephen was just kind of tossing around this idea of like 2 p.m. on Wednesday. He just says, Wednesday at 2 p.m. sound good? And the guy says like, yeah, that sounds good. And it's just kind of like me and Jonathan are sitting there and we have no idea where that warehouse is. We don't know what the name of that company is. Why 2 p.m.? Why Wednesday? But it interested me, the idea of possibly tagging along and arriving in this mystical warehouse for this streaming platform, which would have been likely a hell of a lot like this Cinegears place.
Can you go back to the Japanese ice cream?
What?
I don't remember.
The Japanese, so basically the big task today was to study up and construct and talk about how John and I were going to go about creating this infomercial for Japanese ice cream and rice. There was some confusion as to whether or not we were going to do these infomercials separately, or if we were going to attempt to sell the Japanese ice cream and rice together in the same spot, with an actor there who may or may not have been dressed as a samurai.
Yes, okay. Was
As
John...
I say, they haven't worked with any actors before, so where they would get this actor, I have no idea. Where they would get that costume, I have no idea. There's no in-house producers here, and I would be willing to go at it, but this Steven guy is changing his mind every like 2.5 seconds.
So you and Jonathan are asking in earnest how it is you're going to go about best selling Japanese rice and ice cream.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jonathan kind of blanks out, and I just start to think about it all, and I put together like a little storyboard and do some research.
You put together a little storyboard about selling Japanese ice cream?
Well, yeah, because my big idea, which I never got around to pitching to Stephen because I don't think that he knows I'm even there, was that it was going to be a guy on a hunger strike, possibly like imagining this ice cream in an all very stupid. This is all stupid.
Maybe you should have worked at an ad agency.
And he was gonna be like craving this ice cream, and then it was gonna be a camera cross-axis cut, and he was gonna look at the camera a different way, and then he would say something really silly like "fix your hunger with this" or something. Maybe like a wrench would be thrown up in the air. Not bad just for a first round. Like, I wasn't doing it. That's just first touch. But Stephen, Stephen, we didn't quite get around to that. That was my whole purpose of the day, but we didn't quite get around to it because instead we had to have a meeting about how it is that we were going to market this ice cream. I mean, I don't even know what the brand is. Like, we have no information to go off, so I don't really know how we would go about branding something that doesn't exist.
And then you went downstairs for a cup of coffee?
That was in the beginning of the day because I showed up thinking that it's a workplace and surely they'll have a pot of coffee brewing, but instead they just had about 100 600-milliliter warm Coke bottles next to the refrigerator, and then
that's the refrigerator that you got acquainted with in your Zoom interview.
That's right, of which there was 2 leftover bottles of water and some weird leftover hummus that John very kindly offered to me at a certain point of the day, and that's about it. And they had a Breville espresso machine. I forgot all about this. They had a Breville espresso machine, like the one I had, except for even more, like a $1,000 espresso machine. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking like, well, they must use that all the time. But Stephen had no goddamn idea how to work this machine, and Jonathan again just blanked out. and Stephen actually, going back now that I think about it, he was saying that should be our first task of the day, is figuring out how to use this espresso machine. But basically we got carried away talking about how McDonald's has greatly improved its coffee over the last few years. He was drinking like an extra large McDonald's coffee, and then he says that the place downstairs, Bono's or Bonon or whatever, we're gonna open up soon, and we could go down there for coffee. And then at which point him and I went down there, me and the boss, we went downstairs, and he ordered me a coffee after basically yelling into the abyss for 10 minutes for somebody to appear.
Did it look like a coffee shop?
Absolutely not.
Explain.
It was also unbelievable that I didn't get a close enough look, but basically it was like a long hallway with 4 chairs and maybe a table. And a far back room where it's like, that's the kitchen, I guess, with like a different lighting setup. And then there was like just this shelf slash, display case rack thing, where it looked like there was like about 20 identical, what do you call it, clay, like made out of clay, just like kind of sculptures of some kind that were like, I didn't know, I actually didn't know what they were. I didn't know if they were for sale, or if, I had no idea what these things were, but there were just 20 identical objects that were made out of clay.
Not coffee cups?
No. They were like, they looked almost like baskets atop each other, you know, but, yeah.
How big were they?
They were like this big.
Like bowls?
Yeah, they looked like bowls, yeah, stacked on top of each other in such a way that it creates like kind of an orb. They were white, and they were useless, completely useless looking, and there wasn't the faintest hue of a scent of coffee in the coffee shop.
And no other customers?
No. People don't know that place exists.
Is there a counter?
There was a counter. There was like a table in front of the counter that, like, I don't know if this was COVID protocol, that seemed to just be, I don't know what was on these tables, flyers or something. And Stephen, I don't know how he paid for the coffee. They obviously have some deal, and then the guy from the coffee shop brought my coffee up about 10 minutes later.
What kind of coffee was it?
It was a drip coffee. That seemed to be the first and only coffee they've ever made, ever. It didn't appear to me that this place was a... Many times throughout the day, Stephen mentioned how...
Any biscuits or cookies?
No, nothing
Okay.
like that. Many times throughout the day, Stephen mentioned how they, you know, for like his rice and his ice cream, and then there was, oh yeah, I think he grabbed hold of that whole lychee idea, like he should start selling that too, that he could store all this downstairs. The people down there are happy to store all of that in their coffee shop downstairs, in case the customer ever needs to pick it up in person.
Which customer?
Whoever, you know, his potential clients and customers for these businesses that don't exist. And yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of little details. Lots of little details. There was a marketing woman in the beginning of the day that came in, and Stephen wrote her a check and she left. And
Do you know how much for?
no, but I do know that there was a point in the day where Stephen had his cell phone on speakerphone, and he was investigating the various limits of his credit cards. One of which, like the availability of funds, I don't know if they were all credit cards, but one was $200, one was $500, and one was $10,000 or something. And then he mentioned to Jonathan later that he's got a credit card with a limit of $200,000 if he needs it or something. I didn't know that even exists. He rents about 2 cords a month, and he
To
apparently
customers.
sells about $5,000 worth of retail goods a day.
Of the equipment that...
That's what Jonathan says.
That
There
was
wasn't
in
a
the shop.
single phone call all day, yet there were 3 phones in the office.
And the equipment is just sitting in that office.
And the equipment is just sitting in trillions of Tupperware containers that are unlabeled in this warehouse section, and yeah. And then it's all so badly organized that when Jonathan was giving me a tour of their studio in the back, I was asking how to turn on the lights, and it took them about 5 minutes to like find the switch for the correct power bar to turn on the lights. Like they don't have anything. It's just like a backdrop, a white backdrop.
They have a white backdrop.
Yeah. And a black magic camera. Yeah. And they've got, you know, Jonathan had to bring his own computer. Grace had to bring her own computer, and then I guess I got to use the computer that's at the office.
How many of you do you think they've had the first day of before today?
10? He's apparently been in business for 10 years?
In business doing what?
This business has been up and running for 10 years, apparently. And they have a location for marketing employees in Seattle or something? Where there's like apparently 6 employees in an office. So that's probably where the front is really going down. Or, I mean, yeah.
All in all, would you say that you enjoyed your first day of work?
I very much enjoyed my first day of work, and I have considered returning tomorrow, but the only thing is I don't imagine I would ever get paid, and I would enjoy going back tomorrow, but I can't possibly spend my life like this because I don't know where it would end. Although, that is the interesting question.
You'd end up like Jonathan.
Yeah, that's true, because Jonathan, it's all very similar to like Get Out and all that stuff. Like Jonathan looks like he used to be a man who moved up here from the States, but now
And how long's he been working
he's
there?
hollowed out 3 months. And Grace has been working 1 month, and she's got another thing coming, because it looks like she's not going to get paid for all of her WordPress work.